thank you for responding. Okay, so we can call this meeting to order. Peggy, can you give us a roll call?
Sure. Mr. Hartline?
Present.
Mr. Goddixon?
Present.
Mr. Morton? I'm not sure when he's coming.
It's not coming, so it's 2 people present. Okay. The agenda, has everyone seen the agenda? If we could get that approved.
I'll make the motion that we approve the agenda.
I will second it.
All right. Approval of the minutes.
I will make that motion.
Then I'll second that.
There we go.
All right, you guys are quite a team. I appreciate it.
We'll get through the formalities.
Okay, so to jump in, the discussion guide is also on board docs, and I will share it with the board in tomorrow's in Friday's board update. I will jump through our normal sort of the agenda modified as we get into the financial update, year-to-date performance, and continuing this budget discussion. And you can move or find a better screen if there's a different view. Whenever we meet in here, I always sit out here, right? I prefer to sit out there. I feel better that way. So as a financial update, as we talked in the past, we've been migrating things to Forecast 5 or Frontline. So we now have the Frontline analytics along with the budgeting part. We're able to now get back to these reports that we've become more familiar with. This shows local revenue, state revenue, federal revenue, and a comparison against the 3 years. Local revenue is certainly in line with the budget. Earned income taxes trailing by about 3.2% prior years, right? So that's something I'm not starting the alarm yet, but just to be aware of it.
What does that equate to dollar-wise, approximately?
It's a couple $100,000. Okay. Interest revenue is still relatively strong, right? And we'll probably we had $2,225,000 in the budget. I think we will eclipse that by maybe a couple $100,000, right? I think we're probably at like 2.6 on the run rate.
So that may offset your.
Yep, and that's, you know, if it wasn't that way, I'd be making a lot of money doing something else, I'll tell you, right? If you could guess it them all. State revenue is actually, it shows a little bit of a decline here in 2023, and that's really due to the lack of Social Security reimbursement. So we struggled within the cumulative rollout to get cumulative to print the reports that need to be done. To do that, I think we talked about that at our last meeting. Vera has since figured it out and took care of it, which is fantastic. That report's been filed, so we think we will get that payment. And we had been keeping them up to date all along. So I think that'll get processed and we should be good. And the federal income, federal revenue, you can see the jump in our access payment. As we talked about in the budget process, we accelerated a part of that access money. And we collected almost $900,000 in that.
So question here,
Yes.
in regards to the state revenue, I mean, it says barely 40%, which means we are past the mid-year point of the school year, but we're still lagging.
Sure. Yep.
Is that the...
Right, and that's you know, the school year, we are just really at the halfway, right? So if you look at the school year being a 10-month year, right, which is where really where all the activity is, that's September to January's 5, February to June's 5, right? That's the breakout as it'll occur. Not necessarily December, right, as one would think, because July, August has less activity, less state money coming in around those same ideas, and generally across the board, right? Local revenue, most of the local revenue comes in September, October, right? because majority of that is tax money, right?
Well, we are then anticipating that we'll get close to the
Yes,
100% by
yes.
the end of June.
Yep, we do. This just looks at the details of that, and the notes on the side that, you know, we've pulled in $112 million through January, which is about 3% overall, more than we had the same time last year. Year-to-date difference is driven within local taxes. I think we have a better than anticipated investment income. We've collected 100%, over 100% of our real estate taxes estimate, which includes all of those components, which is good. The year-to-date difference, as I mentioned, is driven, you know, on the negative side, really by that Social Security revenue. You can see the percentage. I don't know if that's clear on that screen across the board, but, you know, we've collected against our budget. We're at almost 75% of the revenue expectation, and that makes sense. One, you know, the current real estate taxes is the majority. Okay. This just shows sort of the top 10 sources of our revenue year to date. Not a lot of excitement there.
How are our real estate transfers versus last year?
I think they are behind last year.
I was just wondering if
But
the
I will
market
make
was
it.
still
I'll
hot
make
or
a
not.
note. Right. I think they are behind.
Yeah, I mean, that comes and goes as market conditions allow.
Yep.
For our interest on interest-bearing checking accounts, et cetera, does that number also include anything from our reserve funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We push to keep it, you know, keep most invested as long as we can.
Right, okay.
Okay. On the expense side, year-to-date expenses have totaled $76,963,000 through January, which is $5 million or 6.5% more than the amount spent through last year at this time. There's two key drivers to that. One is purchase services, which is has a large component of special education costs in there. And the other is salaries, right? So as we talked about in the budget discussion, salaries through this midpoint are up $1 million. Salaries, it's important that salary sort of breaks the rule on the halfway point because all of the teacher salaries are spread over 26 pay periods, and then they could pay out. They could have the payout in June, the summer payout, or they can take a lump sum in June. Either way, we account for those 4 months or 3 or 4 months all in June. So we pull them back to align with our accounting processes.
Did we get the anticipated healthcare changes or?
The healthcare changes are in effect, right? So we need to be monitoring them.
But we now have a picture of, you know, how
we continue,
good or bad that is going to be.
continue to be rocked by specialty drugs, right? Specialty drugs are not being as impacted, and I think we talked about this last week a little bit as well, by the change in copay, right? The copay is a drop in the bucket, and it's not impacting whether one uses them or not uses them, right? In many cases, you don't really have a choice on the specialty drugs. We are going to be looking at our medical plans now because those also changed, but it is still sort of a short window, 3 months to gauge any sort of change in behavior or pattern. Okay.
On our increase in supplies,
Yep.
what is that attributed to?
I tried to look, there was nothing that jumped out. A point worth mentioning is we are still below budget, we're still $1 million below budget, so I think it was just the ebb and flow of ordering.
Okay.
Right, so, when we get to the projection, we'll actually project a deficit under that, but I think it is more of a timing thing. So the projection, we utilize the frontline system to sort of annualize what we've done, use our history, and then chart out the projection. It's projecting, and I try to let it do its thing, and not try to fiddle with it too much. It's gonna project a deficit under the supplies, but I don't think we're gonna do that. We won't hit it. I think it's a timing of when we picked up the supplies, because we're still $1 million below.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was, if Chromebooks got attributed to that, or if the science kits went up, or if,
No, it wasn't, not when I looked. I wasn't completely into the weeds, but I was hovering above the grass. I think I'm attributing it more to timing than anything else.
So not necessarily increases on the products.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there is some of that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm sure there is some of that, but we assume some of that in our budget process as well, right? So while we look at it now, in a year-to-date matter, we look on a projected matter, but I think you've got to sort of have that balance in place, right? Around what is going to happen at the end of the year. I'm not expecting it to continue.
Okay.
Okay. And then top 10 expenditures by program. There's probably not a lot new on that list. The collective charges within special education, regular ed programs, the supervision of human information. There's an IT component, so there's a lot in that line. It's not as straightforward as that one title lays it out to be.
Yeah, I mean, we did some infrastructure work.
Yep.
We did some, Chromebooks, we did desktops. I mean, we did a lot this year.
Right, and to the extent that it's capital, it's not reflected here, right? Because this is just a general fund. But you're right, we've continued to do that. We actually withheld it on the budget side, right? We didn't complete the cycle.
Yeah, we did half.
Pause the cycle, right? So that will, hopefully that'll show and be reflected here as well. This is the forecast. Revenue projections are largely in line with the budget expectations, right? So there's a little bit of give and take in those numbers. I think the federal deficit number, that 160, is probably close to a real number because I anticipate the title funding that we received is actually less than the title funding that we had projected. So that's going to be that $160,000 deficit there. I think the local, perhaps, depending on what happens with interest, its forecasting, as I shared, that it's going to hit 2.6. So that may vary as well. And again, as this is a working, living tool. So as we continue to move through this, we'll see it month to month. On the expense side, again, so we talked about being $1 million more than last year, but that was certainly included in the budget. As we shared during the budget meetings, the CEA contract is worth $2.5 million in payroll salaries and PESers and the payroll tax number. So those numbers are included. To Mr. Godexon's earlier comment on the medical and the RX, we're sort of, right now that's showing a variance. We've got to try to see what happens as we play through those. We've gotten the first look, we've gotten a second look from the Health Trust. We're seeing increases in the single digits, except for RX. RX may be a 10% number, and we continue to battle with that, right? I'm continuing to push the Health Trust to help me figure out how we can better manage that. And unfortunately, there may not be an answer to curbing specialty drugs, right? I think it amounts to 13 employees and over half of our entire RX spend. So it is significant. Those discussions, didn't change much from last year, unfortunately. And then the comment on the supplies side, right? So it's 67% of the budget now. We still have, 4 months to play. Most of those, as we get through the year, the supply number drops off considerably as we move through the school year. Yes. Make sure you have your microphone on. Right, we are recording.
And to the medical expense.
Can you lift it up? Sorry.
And to the medical expense that we're mentioning, sorry, I didn't have the mic on. This doesn't also account for the unknown, which is every time there is a hire, right? You never know. That's a mixed bag of what you get. We're not allowed to ask, nor would we want to, right? That would be inappropriate. So that's a constant moving target in terms of that 13 persons, if you will, that Tom was talking about. At any given moment, because we're constantly hiring folks, that could be different. And in the existing employees, things happen. And then it transitions and then creates one of those. 13 becomes 14 easily, or 15 or 16.
So have we increased the number of employees? I mean, I know we've finally gotten 1 or 2 more bus drivers, and there's been a couple of teachers added in the system. Have we had a sizable group increase?
Our staff size is pretty much is consistent. It's sizable. We go up and down. But remember, on the support side, that's where we get the most transiency and movement on the support side. As far as our professional staff, we haven't had any significant.
Do you ask in terms of healthcare or in terms
No,
of
in
overall?
terms of
Actual bodies.
salaries
Yes.
and,
I don't-
how that is, increasing.
Yes, I don't think we fluctuate more than 3 or 4% in any given year.
Yeah, we've remained pretty consistent in terms of FTEs.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions on the projections on where they stand now?
Nope.
Then we'll jump into the budget. I don't know if, sort of looking for some feedback, right? I believe this year and the next 3 are going to be very difficult. If we thought it was difficult last year, I think we're going to kid ourselves because as the Act 1 drops down, right? We had the opportunity to go to 5.3 last year. We didn't do that. As we shared at Tuesday's board meeting, the ability to continue to be below the Act 1 and meet just your contractual obligations is going to be a challenge, really requiring some significant discussions and planning, right? So the idea of class size needs to be brought up and needs to be evaluated. Secondary class scheduling needs to be brought up, needs to be discussed and evaluated. I think those are all really important things, and we need to do them sooner than later. As we talked about last year, you will get to a point that they're inactionable. So we need to be having those discussions. We're working on those internally. The retirement incentive, that's probably the first and foremost, right? If there's an opportunity to incentivize retirements, we could certainly benefit from that. It was talk last year.
Question, will this cause a need to reopen the contract?
I mean, you can't necessarily reopen, right? You have to have them being willing to reopen.
Correct.
But I don't think, we would see, right? We would see, right? That deal is it's a good contract. For them, it's, hopefully it's a good contract for us. But as we've talked about, the ability to fund it is a challenge, and we've hoped that maybe had to trail off, have a declining percentage as we went through the year to try to match where we were with the Act 1, but I'm not sure if that came up or not. So those are the areas. Yes.
I think we have latitude inside of ARs and policy to certainly do all 3 on that list. I mean, it brings up a question, you know, and the other two, I mean, the bottom two, we can certainly, you know, through an MOU, you don't necessarily have to reopen up. We can just do type of an MOU or something as the,
Those are all
Yeah,
options
right.
that are in the purview of the board,
Right.
right? So we talked about that last year. We provided some numbers around what that could look like. Those are all things that could be considered, right? We're evaluating the staff now to see who are in that sweet spot for considering retirement.
I was gonna say,
And
what-
if we can make that a little more attractive, maybe we have an opportunity to create some savings around that.
have you built a certain number of retirements in already?
I have not. I
Okay.
have not.
I know that we have 3 so far that we've voted on. Is that correct number?
That sounds right. I don't want to hazard a guess at it. I don't typically deal into the deadline.
Right.
And we are not at the deadline.
Right.
For folks to notify. But that deadline is closing near. So we'll get to the end of the month and then anyone who is taking that. But what that does, it just allows folks to then, the value of their sick days. Right?
Yep.
So,
But it's capped today, right? So that
Not to
severance is
exceed.
capped at $7,500, right? If we extended that window, if you made it, you know, last year we talked about making it $15,000. And the savings from that, if you get someone to, you know, they've been here for 30, 35 years, they've been wonderful instructors, right? If there's an opportunity that maybe they take that opportunity. Maybe it's, you know, I don't know what the magic number is, but we did do this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think, in one of Dr. Ben's earlier years, maybe before.
before me.
Right, we did bump it up a much smaller number, and we did get people who took it. I think we moved it to 10 at the time.
Yeah, I want to say my previous tenure, we had done it once or twice, and we had gotten 10 or 12.
Yep.
You know, from the group. I said, I think I want to say that we voted on three FTEs on Tuesday. So I think they were the first 3 that I remember seeing
Sounds
so
about
far. You know, but, you know, if, you know, we have a teaching staff of roughly 400, you know, on any given year, 3%, that is,
Right.
you know, 9 people.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
you know, 9 to 12.
Okay.
Okay.
The slides from that meeting, you know, I think we covered this one. I think everyone has an understanding of what this is telling us. At the Act 1, at the maximum number, we're still showing deficits, and we're showing them across the planning horizon.
On that budget,
Yes.
are we accounting or have you put in anything for investment income in next year?
I did, and
Okay.
mirroring what I had in this year.
Okay,
right?
so
I
two
still
and a quarter.
I actually see it going down, right? Because we
Yeah.
envisioned it
Right.
going down, right?
But we did see a slight increase in our fund balances, so that may offset it.
It may
Right.
have some play in that fund balance, right? And included in today's informational items, right? The inflation rate moved up, not down.
Yeah.
So that may give the Fed pause in moving those rates, right? So that may slow that up, that may help us a little bit.
Yeah.
But as you know, Mr. Harlan, and you repeat regularly, thankfully, interest revenue is not money we can take to the bank, right? So we've been fortunate to have surpluses, have significant investment revenue, to be able to store away, but we can't run the shop based on that number because we can't take it to the bank. I think this and the next one are the 2 most important slides as we look at them, and it's just the percent of money that is going, that's sort of contractually committed to or otherwise, for our professional staff as well as our support staff and our Act 93 folks. The Act 93, as you guys know, their contract ends this year. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I haven't shown anything different or forecast anything more or less around that, but it's an important thing. And hopefully, you know, I tried to make this slide as simple as I can, right? And I think this says it all, right? If we're out saying, hey, we're going to be below the Act 1, right? We're going to, you know, each of these years, that would be a tough thing to be able to do, right? You'd really have to be significantly changing the way we do things in all other areas of the district operation, right? And I know when we talked in the budget workshop, right, we do want to continue our supports. We want to continue to deliver high-end education to our students and our families. Mr. Godekson called out Dr. Bedden and Mr. Gabriel for their work and their what do they call that?
Testifying.
Testify. There's testimony
Testimony.
at the state, right? And it's really a point of pride, right? You know, when the state came out about 3 weeks ago, and the newspapers are all reporting all of this money for ESSER, and what did it get people, right? All this federal money went into education, and schools aren't showing a difference. I think we are the opposite of that, right? I think we use the money. While I was told last year by a colleague that we used it in the wrong way, right? I don't think we could have used it in a better way in terms of where we put our money. We put it on the students and making sure that they came back from the COVID and that they continue to improve. And I think we've done that. Certainly, Dr. Ben's been a champion of making sure that happens with his goals and his guardrails, and making sure that we are continuing to push ourselves as well as our students. So this to me is the telling slide, right? At 1% less than the Act 1, we can't fund the contract that we just implemented a year ago. So, you know, it's a forecast on the 3.4, but it's not going to be much different than that, arguably.
It's also still a significant amount of money we need to find just with the 4% increase.
It sure is. It sure is, right? Even at the full Act 1, right? You can't fund those, the CEA and support staff agreements where they have historically been funded. You can't do that, right? And there's always more costs, right? There's always that need. And that was the challenge we had last year. As I said earlier and on Tuesday, it's not going to be any easier this year, right? And the ability to make sure that we, you know, sort of just have that awareness, right? The notion of having a 3%, or we're always 1% below the Act 1, that just isn't going to be a reality unless we take stark action. And that's really just the deficit, right? This budget this year we're living under is falsely funded by internal, utilizing our savings. And that does always have a timeline. That is always the fiscal cliff, if you will, of grant funding. If we continue to fund our budget or balance our budget on fund balance, that'll be a short-lived plan. Okay, any questions on the budget? Any thoughts as we look at that? I think as we talked about, we've got these things that we're working on. If there's other ideas, we're certainly all ears as we go through this process.
Do we have any idea of what kind of grants they are offering for the exchange of diesel buses to the propane buses?
We have not heard. We applied for the grant. We don't know if
we have
even
no
gotten
idea
the
what
grant, right?
that
No
would
idea.
look like.
No, I do not, right? It's all depending, right? We applied, Mr. Wortman sent it in for 14 buses, I think he applied for. That would be great, and certainly help to the capital fund. But yes, the 14 buses, and those buses, I think that's not all of our buses that are older than 2010s, but that was a majority of the buses that are older than 14 years old. So it's, you know, unique. Some of those buses, kids have been able to ride on their entire William Tennant career, right, from kindergarten through high school. I don't know what that's saying, but it says something, right? So when we talked about leasing buses, right, I think we got that bus paid for several times over. So, we do continue, you're a proponent of the grants, and we are as well, right? We continue to work to try to find opportunities, whether that's within PCCD or any other grant opportunity, and how we can maximize that. I think, again, to Mr. Hartline, I think he's looked at that before, because those are spot and time funding, right? It's $300,000 here, it's $300,000 here. And I'm not a person that stands here and says 300,000 isn't a good clip of money, and we're going to certainly hustle whether it's 300,000 or 100,000 or 50,000. But we need earth-shattering kind of movement as we go through this process.
Do we have a timeline on when they're going to make the decision about the bus funding?
I don't. I will ask Jim to look into that.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to whether it'll be,
This is gonna impact.
before or after June.
Yep, and I brought the notes and forgot to mention it. One of the other things as we look at this year, that we are below our budgeted IU and outplacement numbers, right? We had budgeted roughly 136 students in either one of those categories, and we're currently at 95. Right, and we have a mix of people moving between placements, and we have a mix of students actually returning to the district.
Do we know if the number of special ed students are increasing or decreasing?
The number of
Because
special
I
ed,
heard
that
83
continues
coming
to
in.
grow, right? We have not seen an end to that number, right? We continue to see growth in our special education enrollment year over year. Okay. Any other questions on the budget? All right. So we will have the PSD, the monthly reports as usual. I don't have the comparative analytics in there this week, but I do have that article on the inflation rate.
Right.
And the CPI, is it the CPI? Yeah.
Right, yeah. We get
Moving
new,
towards 3%.
yeah, because I said we get separate numbers tomorrow.
That inflationary number, that is just from yesterday, from the 12th. So we'll see how that plays out. Okay. We have 3 items that we'll be asking to review and approve. The IU, and Mr. Godekson mentioned this the other day, their program and services, instruction materials, research budget. This is their overall budget. This isn't the contract we signed with them in the amount of $2,199,000, which is actually a decrease of over 8%, $205,000 over their overall budget last year. It's a tick up in terms of the district. It's going to cost us another, less, around $2,000, maybe just shy of $2,000. Yep, indeed.
Is it possible for you to list that number on the agenda piece? The districts,
The year-over-year increase.
It is, if we look at the item. Right, so here at the
So it's like
bottom,
60
right,
pages.
it's almost, it's $1,700.
Yeah.
Okay, down here at the bottom, right, it shows each of the years and the overall budget. So the cost to us is $71,923. Is that what you were looking for? Do you want to see more?
Yeah, no, that was what I was looking for.
Okay, yeah, so we.
Yeah, maybe we
sort of-
should enumerate
sort of
that
see
in-
the
Small
history,
amount,
right?
Yeah, do we want to enumerate that in the motion? Do you want to put that now? in
The motion is about their budget. It's not really about us.
Right.
That's informational, right, in my opinion, right?
It is,
It's really
Okay.
asking for approval of a $2.1 million, $2.2 million budget. Because, and the resolution that goes with that is what it's going to say.
Okay.
I mean, I think the important piece is, for them to see the decrease, is.
Yep,
Okay.
good. The next one is a stipulation with the Automotive Training Center, right? We've been back and forth. Mr. Garten has been, he's negotiated this one With them, it is going to cost the district in taxes paid $77,000, and it's a reduction of their assessed value. We've been going back and forth. I'm not certain, and when I went through this again yesterday, I have a math question that I've shared with Mr. Garden. It could be a little bit more than that when we get to the final. When we look at these assessed values, old assessment, new assessment, I'm not sure this 645 is the right number. I think it's actually a little lower, which would actually make us owe them a little bit more. So just for your information, I didn't get an answer before we went to press, but I can update you on that before the meeting.
And this will put this to rest?
It will put it to rest, yep. So we've had a couple of these come about of late, right? I don't know if it's in the drinking water on the other side of Jacksonville
I think the word gets
Road
out.
or what.
I think the word gets out.
But I did meet yesterday afternoon, I had a call yesterday afternoon with Joan Price, who is our other real estate attorney. And we were looking at the Lidl Tesla place, right? So that has been long on our list of things to review. I think it goes back to 2018. And we were sort of dragging our feet because it was just a vacant shopping center for almost as long as I've been here, right? And I remember talking to her about during COVID, nothing's going to happen during COVID. Retail was really suffering, so we kind of just kept pushing the ball down. And then we got Tesla, right? So that building is, it is almost 50% more than we had originally had it. So I think we're going to dial up that and get some pressure on that, and that should produce a win, if you will, if one counts them in as wins and losses, right? This is a loss, that'll be a win, and it could be significant. So we are going to negotiate. We talked yesterday about strategy. She sent me an email last night. We will finalize that and we'll begin those discussions.
Is there a statute of limitations to them?
There isn't, right? It's a very odd process, right? Once you put in your complaint, right, your file, right? So we filed that it should be different, right? That sort of just lingers in Bucks. I think it's in Bucks County, right? So I think it's sort of driven by the county. What Joan told me the other day is Montgomery County has like an automated system. So it sort of bangs them out, right? You get it, you're up, take care of it, right? We're not going to just let these things sit. She informed me yesterday that she thinks that Bucks County is going to begin doing that, which should accelerate the path of some of these, right? Some of them, we lay low on it. Sometimes the other party lays low on it. And it's just a matter of timing. So there isn't today. So, there's this, there's word on the street that they are selling that property. Tesla's not moving out, but they're just selling the ownership rights.
Property,
and our thought is that it's a good time for them. It's probably a good time for us to resolve any backdated information. So we're thinking that will be helpful, and we'll see what how that plays out.
But it would
Keep you
not
up to
be
date.
retroactive to when they
would.
finish the building, though.
What's that?
Will it be retroactive to when?
Yes, it'll go
Okay.
back to 2018, right? So it'll value it for that period of time, and it'll value the building that exists there today.
Yeah, there were some significant improvements made over the last 2 years.
Yeah,
so
that's what I mean.
That's what we'd want the reassessment on.
No, it is. When I talked about it, I have a brother who has a Tesla, my gas Jeep guy.
Me too.
But he told me, and it was really interesting to hear, right? He says when you have a Tesla, you pull it onto their lot for service, right? You take your key with you because they have a key that works any car, or a code that works any car. So you just leave your car there and they lock it up, and you come back in the day and you open it up. It's really sort of amazing. Okay. The last item I have, I'm working on the document as we speak. This was that rebate resolution that we approved in June. So we need to bring forward a resolution to fund that and to be able to make that live. And I will have that to Jeff in the next day or so, get his review, and I'll look to bring it to the meeting on February 25th.
So I believe too that was contingent upon us having a surplus.
Yes.
So I guess we're anticipating a surplus by the end of the year to be able to fund that again for next year.
It funds, so this would be payable, the end would be June this year.
Okay.
The current year. So this is, it's sort of, it's a, you know, sort of moving target. So this would be funding it for the FY '25 year.
Okay.
Right? Then we'd have to do this again.
Right.
For the next year, so.
Did you ever come up with, or do you know, thumbnail number of about how much we did end up rebating?
I think when we looked at it, we did have, let me go back to the,
I think originally we were talking like $100,000-ish.
yep, it was something short of that, so
Right.
let me roll through, because I have them. This is what we had agreed, we
There we
had
go.
looked at, right? So, you know, if the numbers held, we've never done it, so all I've looked at is who filed for the real estate and rent rebate within the state, and if you recall, that's the tool we use to
Right.
verify the next, right? So what they have applied for in '23, we would add that rebate in this current year.
But it wasn't
Okay.
automatic from filing with the state. They still had to put an
They,
application
oh,
into
yeah,
the
they
district.
still need to do something, right? We still have a form they need to fill out. Our rebate is 15% of whatever they got from the state plan, right? Which is that, and I think that $85,000 was the number we had.
That's what I
talked
said.
about.
That's what we had originally anticipated. I was just wondering how much of that was used up, because
No,
I would also
I don't have-
anticipate.
I was looking to see if I
Yeah.
could find a more recent household number. I just was unable to come up with that.
I would anticipate, even just like Homestead, year over year, you're going to see slight increases in it as word gets out that more and more, you know, as to who's eligible and,
You could, right? I think we control the rebate that is offered by the state doesn't change very often, right? So this is what it was $650. When Shapiro took office, he increased that rebate. That rebate doesn't change very much. The other aspect of it, of the rebate program, is what our factor's gonna be, right? So
Okay.
we're contributing, we're adding 15% to that already established rebate, okay? So you could have people moving into that category for sure, right? That would then be eligible for it, that you could have, you know.
I mean,
yin
what I
and
was
yang, right?
thinking.
People coming and going from it.
Well, what I was thinking too was that that there are individuals who, once they're educated about it, will then start applying, much
They may-
like,
they
you
may-
know,
Right, they may not have applied for the state one, which
Right.
is certainly where the money's at, right?
oh, yeah,
So the maximum rebate from the state is $1,000, right? If you received $1,000 from the state, we would add $150 to that number. And that's how we'll look at it as we move forward. All right? And I think that is it. Does anyone else have any questions? Any feedback, any thoughts?
any word as to when MBIT's budget will be coming in?
Well, we had the preliminary budget that
Right.
currently includes an electrical teacher.
Right.
That will be an additional, and that is bringing the, amount a little bit over
It's over
7%.
7% right now.
Yeah, I just, when we're only allowed to go up 4, that one's a
So,
hard one.
They've scheduled another MBIT, very nicely schedules these meetings with the BAs. I think that's coming up at the end of the month. I'm gonna shoot them a message. I'd really like to understand what happened on the capital side,
Okay,
right? So we committed a bunch of capital to them. We've been, not just Centennial, but all of the districts have been
Yeah, because it was like
paying
paying
that.
as you go.
It was paid per the contract, right? So
Yeah.
we keep sending the money, but, through their earlier accounting challenges, I haven't seen anything since. So I'd like to understand, this is what the plan looked like. Is the plan now morphing into something different? So I'm gonna ask to have some view, at least from the district's perspective, where that money is going to.
what are you, or what have you put into next year's budget? What number are you using
For MBIT.
for MBIT?
I'm using their number plus 1% or 2%.
Okay,
Right?
but not the 7%.
Not- Certainly not,
right.
not a 7%. Not a 7%, right? I think I've added like an inflationary number. So as we look at the initial budgets are really inflationary driven. You know, special education, we look a little deeper at that one.
Right.
And on the salaries, we look at what we've done or what we've contractually been obligated to do. Okay?
Anything else, sir?
No.
Anything else?
Can we get a motion to move those 3 items forward?
Motion to move those 3 items forward for the next,
I will be happy to do that.
all right?
Thank you.
7.1, 7.2, and 7.3.
All right?
Then we'll do a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. So are you going down tomorrow, Mr.